Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks with my friends and co-hosts Justin and Dylan Backer. And in today's episode, we're talking about why the Knicks should stay away from Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, I know that the buzz hasn't been as strong as of late as it was. I feel like entering the offseason or, a little bit before the postseason ended. But, Karl-Anthony Towns, obviously, he is an all-star caliber player. He's a three-time all-star, two-time all-NBA. He's had a pretty strong NBA career, but in terms of what he brings to the table, in terms of his limitations, and really the big thing here, in terms of that contract, this is something the Knicks have to stay away from. He's set to make really $50+ million a year for the next 4 years. And quite frankly, he's not really worth that percentage of the cap. You're going to want a guy who is not raising you to a championship contender to eat up, a fourth of your cap, right? This is a guy who struggles defensively. Obviously, he's an unbelievable offensive center. And on a team that, is really strong defensively, perhaps he works. But, looking at what the Knicks have to deal with in the East, you have a Giannis Antetokounmpo. You have a Joel Embiid. I don't want to see what Karl-Anthony Towns looks like against these two dominant forces of nature. And I guess the big thing here for me is it limits the Knicks from making another move, right? It limits the Knicks from getting a different number one. And when we're talking about a number one guy here and, paying someone $50 million a year and trading a myriad of first round picks to get them, I feel like it has to be an elite level guy. If the Timberwolves really valued Karl-Anthony Towns like he's a number one guy, then he wouldn't be on the trade block. This would not be a guy who's widely available, right? And I feel like that's something that I say for a lot of guys, if they were a number one option on a team that is trying to contend, that team wouldn't be looking to move off of you, right? They wouldn't be looking at, okay, maybe we'd rather have Rudy Gobert than Karl-Anthony Towns. That should never happen to a guy who's the number one option. But I want to get you guys involved. Justin, let me know what you think about Karl-Anthony Towns. Kind of give me your thoughts and, how are you doing today, my friend? I know there's a lot when I say what goes into Karl-Anthony Towns, but kind of give me your first thoughts here.
Well, I'm doing good. And as far as Karl-Anthony Towns goes, from a basketball standpoint, it does make sense. Like you said, he's one of the best offensive centers really ever. You know what I mean? Like the guy broke a record for 3-pointers and whatnot as a center. He spaces the floor out. He can help Randall. That front court of Randall and Cat would be one of the best offensive front courts in the NBA, if not the best. But, the contract that Karl-Anthony Towns is under is just an absolute albatross. I mean, he's set to make like upwards of like $59 to $60 million when his extension kicks in after next season, which is just absurd. Would you pay Karl-Anthony Towns $60 million? I mean, I think a lot of people would agree no. You know what I mean? He's not a superstar. He's a good player. He's an all-star, but he's not a superstar. $60 million is absurd. And it limits the Knicks doing that. It limits the Knicks cap. They can't do anything in free agency with that kind of contract. And it's a hard contract to move if it doesn't work out. So, from a basketball standpoint, it's a clear upgrade at center, and it would make the Knicks a better team, but it would come at a cost. I mean, $60 million a year is absurd. I think a lot of people would agree with that. A lot of people would say, at first they'd be like, oh, yeah, we got Karl-Anthony Towns. This is great. We're going to be so good. And then 2 weeks into the season, they're going to go, oh, my God, we're paying this guy $50 million. This guy stinks. You know what I mean? So it's a mixed bag. I think from a basketball standpoint, it's a good fit. He fits the team, but the contract is just such a turnoff that like I don't even want any part of him, to be honest.
Yeah, no, Cat's obviously a very good player. Like Ryan said, three-time All-Star. He won a three-point contest. He's a very good shooting big man, probably possibly the best in the NBA in that department. But it's just that contract, man. I mean, nearly $60 million for this guy. And, if you really think about it, is Karl-Anthony Towns going to make the Knicks like a finals contender all of a sudden? I don't think so. I think the Knicks would be a better team possibly, but I don't think they would. Still think they would need to do some more, upgrades around those guys for them to really become a finals contender. I don't think, Karl-Anthony Towns all of a sudden makes you that team that's going to be better than the Celtics or the Bucks or even the Denver Nuggets on the Western Conference side. I don't think a move like that is going to make you that much better, if even better. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it will. I think it's a move that, quite frankly, will set them back quite a bit because of that contract. They're going to be capped hard. And, as Ryan mentioned, it's going to limit them to be able to make more moves in the offseason or whenever they were to acquire Cat. It's going to limit them heavily because they're going to be tying so much money to one player. You know what I mean? The Knicks have been known to hand out like team-friendly contracts so they can still have some flexibility and make some moves. If you added Karl-Anthony Towns to this team, you're taking on a massive contract that's going to cap you so hard that you're going to have to move away from certain pieces that you might want to keep right now, but you have to move away from them to open up the cap room. You know what I mean? And you don't want to have to be in that situation if you're the New York Knicks. And, as Ryan said, we know the buzz has been, down since it was in the beginning of the offseason, because when the offseason started, he was pretty much tied to the Knicks completely. And I was like, no, please stop mentioning Cat to the Knicks. I do not want him. I think he's a very good basketball player. Don't get me wrong. I think we could use an upgrade like that at center, but I do not like that contract whatsoever. I also am a little skeptical of like a defensive fit. He's obviously not a very good defender whatsoever. And as far as I remember, he even slimmed down a little bit last season because he was forced to play the power forward after the team got Rudy Gobert. So, seeing him and like Randall in the front court, offensively, that'd be amazing. Don't get me wrong. And it would open up the floor for Randall to go to work more inside. But defensively, it would be pretty bad. I'm not going to sit here and lie. It would be pretty bad. We've seen Randall try to guard bigger guys. He's not really the best at doing that. He's not a great defender as it already is. Yes, he like hustles sometimes on that side of the floor. Sometimes he doesn't. But, we all know it's not like he's an amazing defender there. That's not what he's known for. He's not known for his defensive prowess. He's known for his offense. And the same goes with Karl-Anthony Towns. You don't look at Karl-Anthony Towns as a good defender really at all. I mean, everyone can just think back to that, famous picture of him trying to post up Boogie Cousins, and that went so wrong, so we know he's not the most physically intimidating guy on the planet. So, I just worry about that a lot. And I just think like, with all these things considered, it would be something the Knicks just need to stay away from completely. Yes, it sounds like on the surface like an amazing upgrade and an amazing addition, but I feel like it would just, you're not going to get much better by doing that, and it's going to set you back. It's going to hard cap you big time. It would cause more problems, I think, than benefits. So I think, like what you two have been saying, it's just something they got to avoid. I want to hear your thoughts more on this, though, Ryan, before we really dive into this, because I really think that, like, it's something they got to avoid big time, but I want to hear your input on it. I really do.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I feel like that's a contract that limits you from going out and getting a better guy if he becomes available. And as you mentioned, like from an offensive standpoint, let's forget defense doesn't matter for a second here. That's obviously a phenomenal fit, right? You get a guy who can space the floor, can be a real threat for you offensively. The Knicks would be a really good offense. But, here's the big thing here, right? The NBA, out of really the three major sports you think of, which is basketball, football, and baseball. I'm not an expert in hockey, so I can't speak to that. But these are, basketball is a sport that benefits you the most for having a great defense. Having a great defense in baseball, like if you have good pitching, you can kind of get around a bad defense. In the NFL, like, the Chiefs are not historically dominant defensively, but they have Patrick Mahomes, so they'll win a lot. In the NBA, you need to have a really good defense to win. I don't know the last time a team that didn't rank top 10 defensive rating won a title. Like, from my understanding, top 10 defense, you have to be a top 10 defensive team. That was the big concern with the Nuggets. The Nuggets really, they weren't a championship caliber team until they became better defensively. It's that important in the league. It's that quintessential to your success. And especially for the big man spot, we're not talking about a wing. We're not talking about a guard. We're talking about your big man. We're talking about the guy who's supposed to match up with some of the most physically some of the most physically remarkable players in the league. Like, there are just not people like Giannis that are out there. Giannis is that is why he's the Greek freak. He is a one-of-a-kind athlete, right? There is no way Cat is stopping that. There's just, I understand no player can stop Giannis. I understand that. But he is not stopping Giannis. He is getting lit up by Giannis. Giannis is going to look at that and be in a distinct advantage. And the question is, can Cat score enough, really? And is he a good enough offensive player that you can live around his not great defense? Because Jokic isn't a guy that you expect to post up on Giannis and, hold him to, 8 of 25 from the field or something like that. But he plays enough defense, and he is a generational offensive player, so it works. I don't think Cat is that. And because I don't think Cat is that, I don't think that you can make him your number one option and win a championship. And that's really where we're at, right? If this was a player you just acquired, like he just existed on your roster, you'd be a better team. But it's the money, it's the draft capital as well. Like, we're not even getting to the fact the Knicks would have to trade like 3 first-round picks to get Karl-Anthony Towns and a young player. And I don't think that makes them much better. I think that that's a situation where you'll be like the more like the mellow Knicks than you would be like anything else. You would just be a team that has a couple of really good pieces, has the star talent, but doesn't have the depth around them. Poor financial situation, poor draft situation, and then, withering into mediocrity. And then at some point, futility once again. So, you want to build something that can last. You want to build some sort of, multi-year contender. I don't think it starts with Cat, and I don't think it'll ever start with Cat. Justin, am I being hyperbolic here, or do you think it's fair to say that if they get Cat, it's hard to believe that there'll be a championship window opening up?
No, I definitely agree with you because, like you said, it hard caps the team. If you have Cat's contract on the books, then what are you really going to do in free agency? It's going to stop you from making big trades in the future. It's going to stop you from making big signings in the future. It's going to hard cap the team. They will be like the Mellow Knicks. They'll have 3 really good players, and then everyone else will just be kind of whatever. So, I do agree with you on that. And, it's like this. Like I said earlier, there's pros and cons when it comes to Cat. On the surface, he's a great offensive player, and it makes the Knicks a lot better as an offensive team. They were one of the lower-ranked offensive teams in the NBA this year. It's just fact is fact that the reason they were so good is because of their defense. Their defense would become worse with Cat because, Mitch was a big reason that Mitch would save possessions on offense, and he was also our anchor on defense. So, you take him out. I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say Mitch is better than Cat. That's just not true. But there's things that Mitch does that helps us win that Cat can't do. Mitch is one of the best offensive rebounders in the NBA. He's one of the best rim protectors in the NBA. His presence alone is probably the reason we beat the Cavs, to be honest. He dominated Allen and Mobley. So, you take that out, that kind of physical dominant presence, and now you replace it with Cat. Cat is not going to be that physically dominating force. He's going to score a lot of points. But on the other end, our defense just goes down, just immediately goes down because you have a small guard in Brunson as your point guard. So that's bad enough. You need a rim protector when you have a small guard. So you take away the rim protector. Now you have Cat. Randall is the other player in the front court who we all know is not a good defender at all. He's never been known for his defense. And the only real threat defensively in the starting lineup would be Grimes, and he'd have to take on a lot tougher matchups because now he's having to, prevent guys from getting into the paint so that they don't have to go up against Cat, So, because if you get to that point, it's an easy bucket. With Mitch, it's different because guys get past guys on the perimeter and they meet Mitch at the rim. He's going to contest that shot, make it difficult. Cat is not going to do that. It's just fact is fact. Cat's been in the league for 8 years now or something like that. We know who he is defensively. He's not all of a sudden going to turn into a defensive god. So, I definitely agree with you. I'm not a fan of getting Cat. I think they should shoot higher than that. I think they can shoot higher than that. I've seen Joel Embiid rumors. You know what I mean? So why are we going from Joel Embiid to Karl-Anthony Towns? Karl-Anthony Towns seems like a plan B, almost like kind of like the Yankees last year. I'm going to throw in a little bit of a Yankees comparison. When the Yankees were going after Luis Castillo and they ended up getting Frankie Montas, this is kind of the same situation. They're interested in Joel Embiid and they end up with Karl-Anthony Towns. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree 100%. I think the Yankees comparison you made is a pretty accurate comparison. Maybe not as much with the season-long injury situation that Montas has with the Yankees, but I get your point 100%. It kind of seems like it's a fallback option. And to me, it almost would feel like they would be trying to just make a trade to make a trade, more to impress the fan base rather than make the proper move, if that makes sense. Make the fan base feel like they're actually doing something this offseason. You don't want to do that. We've emphasized many times, you don't want to make trades just to make trades. You want to make trades that are the right moves and will, be the proper fits and, fit well with the roster just in general. Like you said, you have a small guard in Brunson, so you need some insurance defensively in the front court. Your backcourt defense is already limited because you have a small guard who is offense oriented and not really known for defense. Yes, Brunson actually does, try on defense, but he's small. So of course that's already a limitation right there. There are going to be guys that are going to get by him. We have Grimes up there to help out with that, but having Mitch down there in the front court is a big help. And like you said, obviously Mitchell Robinson is not better than Karl-Anthony Towns, and we're not over here saying that whatsoever. That's obviously just not a true statement, but there is a difference when it comes to like the way he fits on the roster, the way he meshes and stuff like that side of the floor. Yes, I know offensively Mitch limits some spacing, and it's part of the reason why we weren't as good of an offensive team last year. I acknowledge that. I understand there is a spacing issue with that, and if you added a guy like Cat, the spacing would immediately get better. But you have to have good defense as well. If you don't have good defense, you're not going to get far in this league. Ryan said it best. There really hasn't been a team in a while that was not top 10 in defensive rating that won a title. The Nuggets had to get better defensively. They did, and they ended up winning the title. So if the Knicks take a downgrade defensively, then you could argue that maybe they're going to be stuck in that second round purgatory, or if they do make an Eastern Conference Finals, they'll just get smacked because they don't have good defense in the front court. So there's a lot of things you got to consider. The main drawback for me is, the defense limitations, of course, but that contract, man. I can't get it with that contract. Like, you are not going to convince me whatsoever that contract is worth taking on. You're not going to be able to convince me that at all. That contract is too much. As much as I think Cat is a very good player, he is making way too much money for me to be like, let's go take him anyway. I don't care. He's on that big contract. Let's go take him. No, I can't do it. It's too big. It's going to hard cap us. It'll set us backwards, if anything, because then we can't really make any more additional moves. We're kind of just going to be stuck with the roster we would have if we were to add him. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at on it. I want to hear your take on that, though, Ryan. So I'll hand the floor off to you.
Yeah, so end of the day, the Yankees need to make sure they're financially the Knicks need to make sure they're financially flexible. If they're not in championship contention, or if they're not with that number one option, right? You want to feel like they're always in the running for that number one option. Look, I know we didn't get Paul George, and I don't think we will get Paul George at this point. But the ability to say, all right, we have what it takes to get Paul George, is a step in the right direction, and that Paul George would have likely taken a trade here. That's a step in the right direction. Look, there were reasons to not want Paul George, most notably the age and the contract, right? You have to re-up that deal or just let him walk, and he's obviously an injury risk, and he's 33 years old, so you don't anticipate that those injury risks go down. You anticipate they go up as he continues to get older. But if a guy who's a two-way wing becomes available, or can be that number one option becomes available in the next year or so, suddenly the Knicks are right in position to get their guy. It's not like this team is old, right? Like, we're not in desperation mode. Jalen Brunson's going to be in his age 26 season or 27 season. Julius Randle is age 28 season. RJ's 23. Grimes is 23. Quickly is 24. Josh Hart's 28. Dante Vincenzo's 26. Like, if you add one more year of age to these guys, it's not like you suddenly leave your championship window. In some areas, it might get a little bit better. Like, what does year 3 Quentin Grimes look like? I think it can look like a pretty good player. End of the day, I don't think that this team is in a position where they have to be desperation buying, just like praying it sticks, praying it works, right? And, I really like the point you made about, just not, like, you don't have to do things just to feel like you did a lot this offseason. Do things that you feel you want to do. That's really it. I trust this front office to know which moves to make, but also what moves not to make. In a weird sense, right? Like that Donovan Mitchell trade. If the Knicks had moved, Quentin Grimes and a bunch of first-round picks, let's say like RJ Barrett, are they currently in a position where would they have won the title last year? I don't think so. Would they have beaten Miami? I don't know. Would they have beaten the Celtics? Probably not. And they definitely would not have beaten the Nuggets. Let's be real here, guys. That was not happening. And then you'd go into this year feeling like, all right, I'm not sure we can compete with, a reloaded Bucks team that has Giannis hopefully for the whole postseason. You don't feel like you can compete with a Celtics team that remains excellent every year. You definitely know you can't compete with a Nuggets team, or potentially even a Suns team that has gained a lot of talent, right? So, the Knicks are still flexible with their picks. They're still flexible financially. They can still go out and get that number one guy. But Cat isn't that number one guy. So no, do not go after him. Hopefully Leon Rose is of the same mindset. I believe he is. But with that being said, we'd love to know what you guys think. What are your thoughts on the Karl-Anthony Towns situation? Should the Knicks get him? I know this entire episode was all three of us giving our 3 reasons for us not wanting Karl-Anthony Towns, but I'd kind of been talking about this with Dylan and then Justin behind the scenes as well. I've kind of always wanted to do an episode talking about Karl-Anthony Towns because I really don't understand a fascination with him. But, hey, Kat, if you're watching this, there are definitely teams you can help. It's just not the Knicks. I'm sorry, bud. Looking out for him as well. Like, the last thing you want to do is be like a hated New York Knick, right? Like, that's not fun. No one likes that. So go be like well-liked elsewhere. That would be fun for him. And for the Knicks, I don't want them to sink all their money there. But again, let us know what you guys think. You guys can tweet at us. You guys can check out our Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and of course this YouTube page. The audio version of this podcast, unless you're already listening to the audio version of this podcast, is on Apple Podcast and Spotify. You can check out Empire Sports Media for all your New York sports content. All three of us have great articles up there all the time. So if you guys want our opinions on things or just some news, we've got you guys covered, not just on the Knicks, but on a variety of topics and sports teams. I cover the Yankees as well. I believe Dylan and Justin write about the Yankees as well. So, hey, if you're a Yankee fan, come on over. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate you guys showing up and watching for the entire episode. And for my esteemed co-host, have a great day, everyone. Peace out.